Directive 105, which is students will be able to plot all real numbers on the number line. Now, we've already done integers, so in this video, we're going to focus on decimals, fractions, and percents. Pause the video if you need to finish writing that down. Also, while you have a moment, make sure you pause the video. On your own, write down the definition of what is a fraction, what is a decimal, and also you just took a quiz on this, so how do you get from a fraction to a decimal? When you're finished writing that down, hit play.
For this part right here, we're hoping you can kind of see the things that you like to do as a fraction of your day. So I'll demonstrate the things that I like to do. Definitely Netflix. That sadly takes up too much of my day. When I get a chance reading, and what's the things you like to do after school? So this is like your after school time. Besides that, I do like to spend time like working out, exercising. That's always fun. And then from there, if I have time, I like just to spend it with friends. So if you look at this plot right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 different parts. If I had to estimate, I would say Netflix takes up about 3/10 of that. From there, reading, probably only 1. Hanging out with friends is the majority of the time. And then working out or exercising is the rest. So from here, you should be able to get an idea of like, okay, what percent of my time after school is spent doing things that you like to do. So if I'm looking at Netflix time, this is 3/10 of my time, which amounts to like 30% of what I do outside of school.
So going off of this diagram, we can make a key point that a fraction and a decimal, they are both parts of a whole, right? And this is a little bit repetitive, but fractions and decimals are the same. They just have different representations. Wardrobe change. Same value. Same person. Whatever looks better to you.
You should be on the next page now. We're with number 1. Draw points on the number line below for 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. Label the points be as exact as possible. Well, right away, you should notice that none of those values other than 4/4 are even a whole. They're all parts of a whole. So that tells you it's between 0 and 1. And notice how the denominator is 4 for each of these. The denominator is particularly powerful. We'll go ahead and add key points. It tells you how many parts there are available for these different numbers. So I'm writing denominator. Denominator tells you the number of parts. So here we need to split this into 4 different parts. So I split it in half from there. That's not exact, but it's okay. So from there, if I have it into 1, 2, 3, 4 different parts, now I can be really accurate with how I place these. This is the first one. This is my 1/4 value right here. This is my 2/4. Notice how we can simplify and represent that as 1/2, the exact same value. This is 3/4. as it actually takes up 1, 2, 3 of the 4 parts. And then right here, 1 is code for 4/4, because if we were to divide those, we would end up with 1. Now for number 2, we're going to pause on doing it here. Go ahead and get any sort of scratch sheet of notebook paper. We're going to do number 2 on a different set of paper. Be sure to bring this to class.
So problem 2 from page 25 should look like this. So on your sheet of paper, go ahead and draw these 5 number lines and try to make 0 and 1 equally spaced on each of these lines. We're going to go ahead and plot 1/2. Like Mr. Riggs mentioned, the denominator shows you how many parts your whole should be split up into in even or equal parts. So for this first one, I'm going to look dead center between 0 and 1, and it looks like it's right there. This is going to be 1/2. The next one is 1/3. So now our denominator is telling us to divide this one piece, the same sized piece, into 3 equal parts. So I'm going to try to make this as equal as possible. I already see that I did not make this as equal as possible, but I'm doing my best here. Here we have 1, 2, 3 pieces, so this will be 1/3. Try to see what you're noticing as our denominators get larger. Next we have 1/4. So I'm going to first split into 2 pieces and then each of these into an additional 2. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. This is going to be 1/4. Now I know I'm talking very quickly and you should be pausing this video as we go. So please don't try to keep up. Just take a moment to pause it and write it out very neatly. Next, our denominator is 6. So we're going to go ahead and cut this into 6 pieces. Ooh, doesn't look that great. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 evenly spaced pieces. This will be 1 out of 6. 1/8. Last part. You should be doing these on your own now. Here we have 1/8. Just so you're able to see it, is yours have a red marker with the bar? So here we have 1/2. Here we have 1/3. Here we have 1/4, 1/6, and 1/8. There is a very, very prominent key point here that we would like you to write out on your own and come to class with that conclusion.
All right, we're back here with number 3 on page 25. Again, Ms. Patter just walked you through how we want your number 2 to look. Make sure you have that separate sheet in class, because if you don't, we'll know you didn't watch the video, and that will be able to we want number 2 to look like how Ms. Patter just walked through that. All right, we're here on number 3. Now this is saying label the points on the number line below. Before you start labeling points, based on what we just went over, you really should be asking yourself, how many parts is this split into? Can we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? That tells you right there.
Can I make you a comment? What I love that Mr. Riggs did, he didn't count the dashes, which people frequently do. He counted part 1, part 2, part 3, which was awesome.
So notice what Tyler pointed out, so 8 separate pieces. And if you want to be kind of clever, this might help you out. We could label the 1 as 8/8 because it's exactly what it is. That's 8. That's all 8 pieces there. This might help you actually label what these points are. So if that's 8 8s, you kind of here, then this must be 2 8s. And think for a second before I give you the answer. How could we simplify that? What would be another way to represent 2 8s? We could also write it as 1/4. Same thing here. The fourth one's going to be 4 8s, which we can also represent as 1/2. And then right here, this is the 5th one over. We can write that as 5 8s. Again, notice how the number of pieces and the denominator are very much related. The denominator is the powerful part, but it tells you how many pieces you need to split between 0 and 1. So here and before, you actually get to practice this a little bit in action. It's saying Anna drew a point for where she thinks the number 1 goes on this number line. So here's where 1/4 definitely is. This is where she drew 1. You need to say, do you agree or disagree? If you just point where you think 1 is supposed to go, like that's not what the question's asking. Explain why you would agree or disagree, and after you've done that, maybe plot where you think 1 should go. Moving down here to this bottom number line, here's a little more practice. We'll help you with the first one, then you should pause and try it on your own. Okay? We have -2 all the way to 2. First, we have 1/2. Before we start plotting these, you have 2 options. Okay? As we mentioned, the denominator determines how many spaces there are. If it's 1/2, it's not a whole. It's between 0 and 1. So we need to break this into 2 parts. And 1/2 goes right here. From there we have -1/2. So that tells me it's not a whole negative, but it's between 0 and -1. Your denominator still determines how many parts are going to be between 0 and -1. So 2 parts here. That puts -1/2 right here.
Now, if I'm plotting -2, I know that I'm going to be to the left of the number line. The negative just indicates keep going to the left. In no way should you start going to the left and then all of a sudden shift right. So here we have -2. I can start off at 0 and go to the left 1, 2, and plot that right there. That's already labeled, never mind. The next one is 2/3. You have to think, which 2 integers is it going to be in between? So there's no whole number in front of it, so it's going to be in between 0 and +1 because this is a positive value. Going back to our number line, I have 0 here, 1 here. I know that I'm just going to ignore this for a second and imagine having 3 parts, so I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger. So now I have 1, 2, 3 parts. I am going to 2/3. And then I can go ahead and erase my mark. Next, we have 1 and 3/4. So take a moment, think what 2 integers, whole numbers, is 1 and 3/4 going to lie in between? Well, if we were to read that out loud, it's 1 and 3/4. So 1 and a little bit extra, but not quite making it to 2. So I'm going to go to 1. That takes care of the whole number. And then 3/4. So I'm going to cut this up into 4 pieces because that's what our denominator told us to do. And I'm going to move 3 out of the 4 of them. So 1, 2, 3. This will be 1 and 3/4. Last, we have 1/8. Again, we're not quite there to a whole number yet. It's 0 and 1/8. So in between 0 and 1, I'm going to cut my pieces into 8. If you have a pencil, this might be nice because you can make your tallies and then erase them when you have to go to the next fraction. I'm going to leave mine at actually, I might do that and just plot this back later. If I'm cutting it into 8 pieces, I cut mine into halves and then into 4ths and then into 8ths. We have 1/8, so it is fairly close to 0. If you had it out here closer to 1/2, that would be a little iffy. We do not recommend that. So make sure you are accurately spacing out your pieces. Go ahead and turn your page to page 26.
So notice right away how we're no longer dealing with fractions, but we're dealing with decimals. Which at first might be a little bit tougher. Keep in mind, if you wanted to convert your decimals back into fractions, you could do that. But I think you'll see that it's not necessary. The first key point back in your first page for this objective was how decimals are part of a whole and in base 10. That just means when we go to plot decimals, to do it accurately, we need to break this down into 10 pieces. The beauty is once we break it into 10 pieces, we can plot anything we want to, whereas with fractions, we have to keep redividing. Once we plot those 10 different parts, we'll be fine. But so notice how for these first ones, ignore this. That's not it. Don't get confused by that, please. There's 0.2, 0.4, 0.8, and then 1.2. I'm going to focus on up to 0.8 because there's no holes there. So I know all of those are between 0 and 1. There's no whole numbers there. So let's focus on breaking this space into 10 parts. Square root of half. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not hard. I'm going to do that again. A little better. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And do the same thing here. So now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, more or less equal parts. Now that we've done that, this becomes really easy to plot. 0.2 is going to be 0.1, 0.2. You can always put 0.2 if you like to as a personal preference rather than no whole numbers. 0.4, just 2 more long. 0.8, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now we're at 1.2. Now, you do need to, this needs to be in 10 parts. You don't necessarily have to make the whole 10, but recognize the spacing, these 0.1 spacings. At the very least, you should replicate the distance for these first ones. So this would be 1, 1.1, and then 1.2 would be right about here. Going to 2 and 2.
Sure. For problem 2, you'll notice something a little bit different. Here we were dealing with the tens place, and here we're dealing with the hundreds place. Now, what we want you to do is cut up each of the pieces into 100 pieces. Go ahead. I'm just kidding. That would be crazy. Because if you did that, this is what would happen. Here are fourths. So in order to cut up to 100 pieces, that means I'm going to sit here and divide each of these up into 25 additional pieces. Let's watch how boring that is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Mr. Riggs, can you see 100 from where you're standing?
Not very well.
Not very well. So am I wasting my time?
Probably.
A little bit. So I'm just being sarcastic. But really, if you're dealing with 2,500s, you can just go off based on the tens, right? You know it's going to be just past 2 tens. So instead of doing this stuff, I'm going to go over here and say, all right, just looking at the tens place, it should be near 2 tens, which is a little easier to see. So just like Mr. Riggs did, we're going to cut this into 10 pieces. Okay. This is just a little bit, so it's 2 tens. Sorry. 2 tens. This is 3 tens. And it's just past 2 tens. So it should be somewhere right here. Mr. Riggs, do you prefer a different method on how you do it?
No, this is really super similar and equally efficient. Notice how the 0.25 is perfectly in between 2 tenths or 0.2 and 0.3. We can do the same thing for 0.5. This is 4 tenths. Right here is going to be 5 tenths, or in this case, 0.5. This might be a good time, though, for you to convert these into fractions. So 0.25 would be 25 over 100, which is the exact same as 1/4, which would put it right there. If we were to split this into fourths, you would put it right there at 1/4. This would be 1/2, which would go right here. This would be 3/4. We can easily, this is the half mark. Right here, right there are the 4th marks. So right here is your 3/4 or 0.75. If you plan to convert it to fractions, we do want the actual original value plotted, which is totally fine if you want to use fractions. When you go to plot the point, it should be the original value, which is 0.75. 1 goes here. And I'm going to show you how you could have just done this with fractions on this part. 1.25 is 1 and 1/4. Let's split it in half and fourths. The 1's here, so 1 and 1/4. So notice that you kind of have both methods at your disposal. If you want to apply decimals, break it into 10 parts. If you want to use fractions, just convert it back into a fraction form. So now, number 3, the only thing we're going to say is, notice how this is not broken into 10 parts. So it does want you to write these values as decimals, like what decimals do those represent. But be aware that it's in 8 parts. That's going to change. It's going to be a little different from what it is here.
Go ahead and finish this page and finish page 27. Come into class ready to go, ready to practice, and we'll go over the homework when you're done.